going to be talking about today with populations and samples. A sample is going to be a little bit of the population. It's going to be a section of the population that lets us know what the population is like. So we have a town mayor. The mayor controls the town, right? It's his job to make sure that everything in the town is how it should be, and he has to deal with all city issues, including busing.
I can't stand all of this paper and litter piling up. All of this planning is getting me nowhere. I need the help of the people. I'm going to get out there and knock on every door in town. But I can't leave without tidying up first.
So, if I say Michael Coleman, you know who that is?
No. Yeah.
Columbus's mayor, or what?
Yeah.
Is Coleman still mayor?
No.
Who is it now? I can't.
Andrew Ginther?
Ginther, right? Is that right? Yeah, maybe. Is Ginther the mayor now? Good. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Allen. So, Andrew Ginther is now Columbus's mayor. So, if we were having a trash issue, what do you guys do with your trash?
Throw it away.
Well, okay, but once you throw it away, how does it get taken from your house? A garbage truck comes by, right? So let's say this town is having issues. The garbage isn't all getting collected. People are getting upset. So the mayor says, now think about Columbus. So Mayor Ginther says, I'm going to walk around and knock on every door and talk to every person to find a solution for our trash problem. Can you think of pros to doing that and cons to doing that? Good things and bad things. Take a minute or two, write down some pros and cons. You can even discuss with your neighbors if you want to. What do you think would be good about that method? What do you think would be not so good about that method? Yeah. I'm trying to stay helpful. No, it's totally. All you have to do is remind me not to. Mayor. Governors for the state. Mayor is for like a city, a town. John Kasich. He's running for president. He's our governor.
Do you think you should know?
This is not a political class. We're not going there. All right. So if I zoom in here, let's talk about some pros. And let's talk about then some cons. So who's got some pros, some good things that would come out of this? Luke?
More ideas.
More ideas. Lots of ideas. What else? Yeah. Fran?
Majority of opinions.
Yeah, you'll get not just majority, but you'll have all opinions. If you talk to every single person, you'd have all opinions. Eli? Yeah, it might actually get done because if you talk to the people and they know you're trying to do something, like if I say, hey guys, what's a suggestion for the commons area? And we never, ever do anything with the commons area, you'll probably be like, hey, whatever happened to our suggestions? Like when the people know, then they're waiting for something to happen. What about some, you got another pro? You got another pro? I think we're good on pros. Thomas?
I think that it will take a very long time.
So is that a pro or a con?
Con.
It'll take a long time. You don't know what the population of Columbus is? Yeah, it's millions of people. Literally, the population of Franklin County, which Columbus is part of Franklin County, the population of Franklin County is bigger than the entire state of Maine. My sister and brother-in-law used to go to Maine, yeah, so when we would drive there, we'd look up like interesting facts. Yeah, Columbus is a very dense population, so if you wanted to talk to every single person, it would probably take you years. So the problem with this is the get done, well, if you're going to talk to every single person before you get it done, it would get done eventually. It might take a very long time. What's any other cons? Yeah?
Well, actually, it's a question.
Okay.
And it's about
Okay.
So is it like a mayor? Is there a mayor for like Worthington and Powell, or is there a mayor for just Columbus? Because Columbus is like the capital of Ohio.
So, anyone know?
Well, there's.
Yeah.
So each city has a mayor, and then Columbus, which is the capital, has a governor, which governs the entire state.
Well, so Ohio has a governor.
Yeah.
So
Ohio has a
the
governor.
problem with Columbus, people think about Columbus as Greater Columbus. People will say Worthington is part of Columbus. It's a suburb, but Worthington's its own city. So cities have mayors. It's like kind of the head of just the city government. So like if Phoenix had a student council or something and you had a president, that would be like our mayor for Phoenix. But it's a mayor because it's for the city. Governor's for the state. So every city will have its own mayor. Like my city where I grew up, Coshocton, has its own mayor.
Who is it?
I don't know now. I haven't I haven't paid attention in a while.
Where's Coshocton?
About 70 miles east.
So would the mayor have like a big giant house?
Not normally. They don't normally make tons of money. It's kind of like teachers. Like you become a mayor because you want to help your city. Like I became a teacher because I want to help kids learn. Mayors aren't doing it because they want to make tons of money. Like the president doesn't make that much money. Like the president of the United States.
It's like $100,000 a year.
I know.
That's all.
No, they don't.
It's not. I don't
They
even think
make
it's,
like they make more than that. They make like $300,000 a year, but then they also get like free everything.
I don't think it's actually that. It might be, but I don't think it's actually that
It's
much.
about.
Because I had this conversation with my parents. They have like private like, areas and then like their own
Yeah.
chefs and everything. They
Normally they've got money before they become president though. Like you have to have some funding. Any other cons? Cons about knocking on every single door, talking to every single person.
A person has to do that.
Yeah, like if the mayor is doing this, it has to get done, and that would take a very long time. I'm just gonna leave that under the get done, but we'll underline that with red to say that can also be a con. Getting it done is also a problem. Do you think every person you talk to is gonna have the same ideas?
No.
No.
So one con would be lots of different ideas, which sometimes is good, but when you have too many ideas, sometimes it becomes a problem. So we've got some pros and cons here. Do you think this would make the people happy? Do you think after you talk to every single person, do you think that would make the people happy to say, okay, our voices were heard? Yeah, right? Like that would probably make people happy. So it's good in a few ways, but there's a lot of ways that it's not very good. You know, think of an idea where we couldn't ask every person, but we could still get like all of the opinions. If I want to avoid asking every single person, but I still want to try to get most opinions heard, won't a lot of people probably tell me the same things? Mm-hmm. Yeah, like not every single person will have a new idea. So if I look at this group of people here, this is what we call a population. A population, we want to put this definition on our notes. A population is a complete set of items being studied, or if you want, you can just put the entire group being studied.
Complete set of what?
Complete set of things being studied, or entire group being studied. Now, if I then want to take a sample, I don't want to talk to every single person. That'd be quite annoying. So instead, I might pull all of the addresses for the city. I might then randomly pick out addresses and send out little like mailers, or then I might go and talk to these people. I'm not going to talk to everybody. I'm going to talk to a sample. A sample is a part of the population, or a small group of the population. So for sample, put part of the population. You can use part, or you can use a group. Sometimes we're talking about people, sometimes we're not talking about people. Bless you, by the way. Your heart just skipped a beat.
Thanks.
You know your heart skips a beat when you sneeze. It's kind of nerve-wracking.
This makes me nervous.
Now, a subject. Anyone guess what a subject is?
A single person.
Yeah. So if you've ever watched any of those like creepy movies or anything, they're like, we need a subject. Like normally that's not a good thing if people are looking for a subject to test something on. But a subject is one, and this is where it gets weird. Because we don't always talk about people, I'm going to say one item from the sample. If we're talking about people, it'd be one person. But if we're talking about animals, it might be, so we don't say person, we say one item from the population. And you can abbreviate population with pop with a period if you want, because I know population is kind of a longer word to write out. So as long as you can remember it, you can abbreviate population if you want. So here is a good example that can help you remember. Your population is the entire group. I can look at samples. I have two different samples here, a really small sample and a bigger sample. And a subject is any one item from the population. Questions? Okay. So let's say we're investigating the lengths of the words in a book. You have a new book and you're like, well, I don't want to read this if the words are too long. I don't really want to challenge myself. So we want to determine, is this a population or is this a sample, and why? So take a second, give you about a minute to try to answer these on your own. Then I'm going to use cards to see who is on their A game today. So remember, a population is the entire set being studied. Samples are parts or groups being studied. If you're wondering or doubting, check with your neighbor. So if it's everything that you're studying, that's the population. If it's parts of what you're studying, that is a sample.
Wouldn't half be a sample?
Is it the entire thing? Then it's a sample.
Can we do subject?
Ooh, I'm going to go to you for that one. So, Bella, if you look at all of the words on a page of the book.
Or a sample.
Yeah, all is a little misleading, but then on a page. So if you didn't underline on a page, that is a sample.
Yeah, you got it right.
Luke,
What?
every other word in the book.
Sample.
It's a sample, right? That Luke asked me, would half be the popular? Well, is it the entire thing? No, it is half of the words in the book, but it would only be a sample. Karina, if we look at all of the words in the book, yeah, it's all of the words. That's population, because our items that we're studying or that we're looking at are words. So this is an example when we don't use people, we use something else. Now, Bailey, you asked me a really good question. What'd you ask me about D? So if we look at one word in the book, is that the entire population?
No.
No. So if we're being asked population or sample, we would call this sample. But Bela was spot on. It really is also a subject. So it could be a sample, but that sample size would be way too small. Because if you want to talk about all of the words in a book and you only look at one, is that going to give you a good indication for how long all the words in the book are? No. So we don't really even want to call it a sample. We would call it a subject. But if you're only being asked population or sample, they don't even give you the option for subject. So we would just call that a sample, but really it's a subject. Yeah, Cassie?
So with food, like people like who work at food stores, they give out samples.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that be a subject because you only take one?
Well, it depends on what you mean by one.
Like ice cream.
So if they're trying to sample pizza, how would you get one? Like, say the pizza is the population, right? And it's sliced into, like, tiny little squares. That's where it gets hard to say, like, a subject being, like, one, because you can't really... Now, if they give you, like, one M&M, and they said, here, try this sample, then that would be a subject, yeah. But if they give you, like, 4 M&Ms out of the bag, that'd be a sample. right? So it gets a little tricky with food. But normally we just call it a sample because it's part of the whole thing. Because a subject is a sample. A sample is not necessarily a subject. Does that make sense? Like a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not necessarily a square. Yeah, it's that same sort of thing. A subject is a sample. It's part of the sample. A sample is not necessarily the subject. All right, try the got it. You can write P or S. I know it says which are samples, but I'd rather you write P or S for population or subject. Or population or sample, sorry. So, what do you think? Is it the population? Is it the sample? Is it the population or the sample? And actually, you'll talk about this next year with Mrs. Cullinan. We switch back and forth with global cultures, but she does a T-shirt thing where you learn about like where a T-shirt comes from and how far it travels and everything. So maybe we're talking about where did the material in the shirt come from? Well, like what country? Because you can look on your tags and see where things came from.
China.
Take about 30 more seconds. Depends on what things you're talking about. All right. No, we're on today. Or, well, she stepped out, I guess. She was. We'll put her card back in. So Brennan, if I look at every other T-shirt in the store, what is that? Sample, right? It's not the whole thing. That's a sample. Katie, if I look at all of the T-shirts in the store, yeah, it's all of the T-shirts. That's a population. All of the medium-sized shirts. Cassidy? Sample, because it's only looking at the medium. Even though it's only the medium, so it's just a sample. Zach, what about one T-shirt in the store? That's a sample, and really, it's a subject. So here, I'd like you to write out sample/subject so that you can remember if it's one, it is a subject. And Abby, all of the striped T-shirts in the store. Sample. Yeah.
About 3 and then 5.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily say at the top that we're trying to study all of the T-shirts, but just T-shirts being sold in the store. So couldn't 3 technically also be considered population?
This would have to say we're studying the medium T-shirts. For the medium shirts to then be the population. Because, I agree with you, it's kind of vague, right? It's kind of general. It says we're studying the T-shirts in the store. Well, okay. The medium shirts are a group of T-shirts. They all match each other, but it's not the larger population. So imagine like walking into Old Navy and they say study the shirts. Well, if they just say study the shirts, you're talking about all of the shirts in the whole store, even like polos, even button-downs. So when they say all of the T-shirts, that makes your population just the T-shirts. And we can get more specific. We could say, what if you're studying all of the V-neck T-shirts? Or like, so that how specific you are in your description determines the population. Does that help?
Yeah.
That was a good question. I appreciate that. All right. What, you guys should know this, what is a tendency towards a particular perspective? Something that might skew how you feel. A bias. So up here, a bias is a tendency towards a particular perspective, say that 10 times fast, that is different from the overall perspective of the population. The population's particular perspective. So, if you walk into Benihana, you know, Benihana up at Polaris, it's the Japanese steakhouse sushi place. If you walk into Benihana, or here, I'll make it easy. You walk into Mr. Sushi, the store Mr. Sushi. You say, hey people, I'm conducting research. Who here likes sushi? Do you think there's going to be some bias in collecting that data there? Yeah, you walked into a sushi store and asked, who likes sushi? Where could I go to try to get rid of that bias?
McDonald's. Kroger.
Well, okay, so what about McDonald's? Do you think there'd be a bias at McDonald's?
Yeah, different types of food. It would be away.
Yeah, people who eat at McDonald's probably don't necessarily like sushi because McDonald's is pretty basic food and it's really not good for you. Abby?
You could just go to like Macy's
Yeah, go somewhere that doesn't have anything to do with food. If you stood at the entrance to Macy's, say, hey, do you like sushi? Hey, do you like sushi? Macy's has nothing to do with food. So if somebody has a bias, that won't matter because them walking into Macy's has nothing to do with their bias towards sushi.
But what about a pizza place with wings?
That would still probably have bias because it's a food establishment. Like you want, if you're collecting data about food, you want to probably go somewhere not about food to collect your data to get rid of bias. See, well, that's like very general food. So that, like, I'm talking specific restaurants. Like he said, what about a wing place? Did I hear Mr. Hudson? Somebody have a question? No? Okay. I like sushi for what it's worth.
I don't like sushi.
All right, so I want you to try this on your own. Do you think this group will have bias? And if so, why? We are studying who goes sledding each year. We want to know, and now a little bit of geography that you got to think about here. We're studying who goes sledding each year. So take a minute. Off to the right of each of those, say yes or no if you think they have bias, and if it's yes, why? Why do they have bias? Mm-hmm. We're getting towards the end of the year. Everything you write should, I mean, and they can be short sentences, but it could be yes because they have blank or because they live blank. Like it doesn't have to be a big long description.
What does this have to do with math?
It's statistics. My brother-in-law is an accountant. I accidentally, while we were visiting him, said this is a statistical anomaly, and he laughed and was like, "No, it's not." Statistics is the branch of mathematics where we talk about how it's where we collect data and analyze it and make statements based off that. So when we get to the next page, we're going to talk about inferences, things that we can infer. If I had done a study of the incoming 7th grade class and found out a bunch of information, I could then make inferences for things that we could do during the year. Say like we're talking about the Columbus trip. Say we poll 10 of you and talk about what would you like to do. That would be a sample. And from there, I could infer what things we should go do. Go to the zoo, go downtown, like that sort of stuff. So, do these have bias? If so, why? Oriana, you're back with us now. Everyone in Colorado, Utah, and Vermont, that's who you decide to talk to about whether they go sledding. What do you think? Do they have a bias?
Yes.
Why?
I think those are states with snow. I don't really know.
They have a lot of very snowy. You see them on the wall like mosquitoes.
You can put these are snowy states. You could put these are mountain states. You could put these are cold states. They have colder weather. You could say these are states with a winter.
We are the same.
Okay, so yes, everywhere has a winter. But what I really mean is a real winter. A cold, snowy, actual winter. You go to Florida, it's not really winter. All right, hold up. Eli, if I surveyed 200 people from every state, do you think that would have a bias?
Just like, I guess it depends on what, like, they're doing. No, not really. No.
Why wouldn't it?
Because I guess it's just people. It's not like they live anywhere specific. Because of,
Well, they live in each state,
oh.
but when we collect from when we spread out the data that I'm collecting, we have a large enough sample that each individual person will probably have bias. Most of us have biases about most things. But when you survey a large group from a variety of places, you get rid of the bias. You kind of cancel it out. So because we could say because all states, I'm kind of trying to paraphrase.
Are different.
Well, I was going to say because all states were surveyed. Now, Thomas, what about everyone in Florida, Louisiana, and Texas?
Yes, because they don't have any mountains and it's very hot there.
Yeah, because these are hot states. And Crystal, what if we surveyed everyone who owns a sled? It's okay. Everyone who owns a sled. Let's say you buy a sled and there's a little thing that says, here, take this survey. Do you think that's going to have a bias? If we're talking about who goes sledding, and you ask the people with sleds, do you think? Yeah, why?
Because they're going to buy their own sled.
Do you think I'm going to buy a sled if I live in Florida and can't go sledding?
So maybe if you have relatives in Vermont, but
Yeah, I've only one sled.
You probably can't even buy a sled in Florida. There's probably nowhere to even get one. So, Balaam. Oh, hey, I can't hear Balaam. Yeah, but if you own a sled, you probably live somewhere where sledding is possible. So, like, even though this year you maybe didn't go sledding in Ohio, you still probably have a bias towards it because they own. So, let me phrase it this way: if you did a survey on how you got to work, say you want to collect data on how people get to work, and you surveyed only people who don't own cars, do you think that has a bias?
Yeah.
If you surveyed only people who own a car and no other method of transportation, do you think that has a bias? So if I just survey a group of people that I don't know anything about, then I get rid of the bias. But if I survey a group saying only people who own sleds, this does have a bias because they own the sled. That E looks like an O because they own sleds. So, now we're going to talk about being representative. So, let's say we're taking a survey of Phoenix. We want to take a survey about, what would be a good thing to survey? What do you guys want to find out?
well, like what?
Whoever
People,
brings
what
snacks.
sports people like?
What? Okay. What sports do people like? I kind of anticipated that you guys would
I
say
don't
that.
like sports though.
So,
Then you don't like
what do you think would happen? What do you think would happen if I surveyed only girls?
They would say probably
Most of them would say
field hockey.
So do you think many girls are going to say their favorite sport to play is football? Do you think many girls would say their favorite sport is baseball? Well, but if you're a girl, you probably play softball, right?
But
So,
you didn't say which sport you play, say which sport you like.
okay, so let me rephrase it. Which sport is your favorite to play? It's like, which sport do you like to play? What if I surveyed only boys from Phoenix? Probably football, probably soccer. Now, soccer is either gender, obviously. So wait, so back up. Hold up, back up. How could I make my survey fair to try to get real data that doesn't have a bias one way or the other?
Half boys, half
Bunger?
equal amount of boys and girls.
Why equal amounts of boys and girls? What about Phoenix would make me survey equal boys and girls?
Because that would get you like an equal amount from like an overall distributed amount.
But what do you know about the population that made you say that?
Then it's half boys and half
Yeah, we know the Phoenix population is half boys and half girls. That's how the lottery works. So if we wanted to take a sample that canceled out bias, we would want half boys and half girls. So check this out right here. If we had a population that was 12 females and 4 males, how many are total in this population? 16, right? So if I want to look at females, so over here, I want you to write female. What would be the ratio or the fraction that I could set up for females here? If we want to talk about like percentage or part divided by whole sort of thing, Bella? So you're doing a comparison, 3 females for every 1 male. I want like out of the total.
For every male, 4 females.
How many females are there?
12.
What's the total?
1 to 3.
So we could set up 12 over 16 for part over whole, which is really 3 over 4 when we simplify. Which 3 over 4 is really what percent? 75%. So this is why this sample is representative. I want you to underline, circle, star, something to the word representative. It will be proportional to the population.
That's
What?
No, I figured it out. I just had it.
A representative sample. Guys, I only got like 5 minutes left. Stay focused. A representative sample will be proportional. I'd put a big star next to proportional. If it's representative, it has to be proportional. It has to match the population. So for males up here, we know there are 4 males out of the group of 16, which is really 1/4, which is really 25%. So that's why down here, 25% male, that is representative. But remember, this is not the Phoenix population. This is the population that we see right here. And a biased sample is like what I was talking about if I surveyed only women, only men, only people in the sushi shop, only people at the soccer store. There is a bias when you select out things that don't match the entire population. So if down here I chose 50% females and 50% males, I'm like, great, I have matching males and females. Is that proportional to this population? No. That population has more women than men. This would be a biased sample. So we already said this, but down at the bottom of the page, I want you to write, so think about Phoenix. It says, what would we need to be true about our sample to be representative of the student population? So we would say 50% boys, 50% girls, because the population is 50-50. If we did a survey to Phoenix and not be biased, we'd want half boys, half girls. Questions? Now let me ask you this. So half boys, half girls, right? So what if I'm doing my survey of Phoenix and I'm saying, like, what's your favorite cafeteria food? And I want a non-biased sample. I want a representative sample. So I choose Bella and Isaiah. And that's it. I survey just Bella and Isaiah. Do you think that the majority opinion is going to be representative by just Bella and Isaiah when we have a population of about 170 students?
No.
Why?
Because it's only 2 out of.
Because what if I only buy lunch on pizza day?
What if you only buy lunch on pizza day? Okay.
I never buy lunch.
What if Isaiah never buys lunch? What's wrong with my sample? What's creating the issue? Thomas?
Only 2 people are being done, and
So-
and only 2 people are quote unquote voting for this.
So what would you say about the sample? The sample is...
Too small.
Yeah, sample's too small. You have to make sure that your sample's big enough to be fair. So even if you have a representative sample, you can still run into problems if you don't survey enough people. So we normally want to survey at least 10% of the population, sometimes more depending on how small the population is. So if I had a group of 10, that's my population, I don't want to survey just one person. Sometimes if my population is small enough, I survey everybody. Could we survey all students at Phoenix? Yeah, it wouldn't be that challenging. We could do it during foundations or something like that. So it depends on the size of your population to how big you want your sample to be. So this is what I was talking about with making inferences. Let's say I take a survey and I find out that 25% of people, or of whatever I was surveying, have characteristic X. in the samples. Let's say I use you guys as my sample. Hopefully we're equal male, female. I know we're not, but let's assume that we are. And I find out that 25% of you have brown eyes. Do you think that we could probably infer that 25% of the school has brown eyes?
No.
We could probably pretty safely infer that.
Yeah.
Because was this class chosen based off eye color?
No.
No. Does this class have anything to do with the color of your eyes? No. So is there a bias in this class? No. So this would be a non-biased sample, and if we were equal male, female, that would be representative. We have about 20 in here. That would be a big enough sample, and we could probably infer that the population would have close to what I found about the sample. So if it's valid, what's it mean to be valid? True. So under this, I want you to underline valid, and either off to the side, somewhere right, true. Valid means true. On the back. Yeah, sorry, we got a lot of pages with these notes. All right, I'm going to speed up a little bit. Got to try to get done. So when you infer something, it is a judgment made by interpreting data. You might want to highlight this. And inference is a judgment made by interpreting data. So if you know that every time you ask your dad about a sleepover early in the morning, he says no, what do you think you're going to do the next time you want to go to a sleepover? Ask him in the afternoon, or ask him in the evening, or ask your mom, because you're inferring that if I ask my dad in the morning, he's going to say no. That's an inference based off data that you have collected, whether you formally collected it or not. Now, an invalid, what's it mean to be invalid?
Not.
Yeah, in means not true. So not true or false. So if our sample had 45% of a characteristic, but my sample was completely biased, you want to underline, circle, star, something that this is a bias sample, I cannot make an inference off a biased sample. So if in this class, how we are right now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 boys and about 11 girls, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, well 10 today. 8 boys versus 10 girls, that is not 50-50. This would be biased. So if I take a survey of this class, I cannot infer something about the entire school because this is a biased sample. So if you have a biased sample, you cannot make an inference about your population.
Who's missing Mr. Adson?
Yeah, Eminol and...
That's so quiet.
No, Abby's here. I think we're just missing Eminol. So if Eminol is here, we'd be very close to a representative sample. 10 and 9, we'd be really close.
So we have 20.
All right, so check this out. We're going to say, are these inferences valid or invalid? So, years in the future, 200 years in the future. Let's say you were able to freeze yourself, cryogenic freezing. You wake up 200 years in the future. You walk into a room, a little playroom, babies. 8 of your babies are humans. Woo, humans are surviving. 2 of them are robots. Kind of freaky. Don't know why we have robot babies. I don't know if they grow up. But could we say that 20... Hold up. This sample is representative. Underline, highlight, that means it's not biased. So representative is not biased. Could we infer, based off that sample, that 20% of the population is robots? Yeah. Is 20% of my sample robots? Yeah. So if 20% of my sample is robots, I could infer 20% of my population's robots. So this one checks out. Could I infer there are more humans than robots in the population? Yes. So both of these are valid. Those are valid inferences. Could I infer that 25% of the population is robots? No, that doesn't match my sample. 25% is not right. Could I infer that 2 out of every 8 members of the population are robots? What would it be? 2 out of every 10. So they're trying to trick you because there are 8 humans. So these are both invalid. So the 2 on the left are valid. The 2 on the right are invalid. We are going to stop right here. I'll probably just have the guest teacher just start on the next lesson because you guys should know what we're doing at this point. So if we have any issues, we can circle back to this once I'm back. Take out whatever notes and stuff you want, clip them, and put them in your locker. Okay? So I'll try to get you guys some folders to file things into.